Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and you can find more about them by going to ipaworld.org. In our effort to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, and these are conversations with folks who are just as passionate about play as we are. And you can find the Porch Play Chats on IPA-USA.org. And up in that top right-hand corner, subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our Facebook page. Be a friend on our Facebook page, and magically Porch Play Chats appear on your feed every Monday. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA-USA. And with me on the porch is Lisa Murphy. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, nice to be back.
Lisa is one of our wonderful board members, and with us today is Kristy DeGraff. Kristy's been a family childcare provider for 14 years. She took a slight detour and was a center director for a little bit, and she's a convert to play-based practice. So I'm really excited to hear about your evolution of coming back to play. She's a trainer for the Childcare Agency and has presented at several local conferences. She has a BS in psychology and a master's in communication. And her topic today is, well, that's nice for you, but how do you add more play and let go of control when it feels impossible or overwhelming? Oh my goodness. That's like 7 Porch Play Chats in one.
It's true. It's true.
So talk to us about your evolution first, and then how you handle those kinds of questions.
Sure. Okay. So I actually came to family childcare from social work. I was working for the Division of Child and Family Services. I had been with them for 6 years when I decided to do family childcare, but I had 2 young kids and I wanted to spend more time with them, and we were having a hard time finding good care. So I decided I was going to open a family childcare, but I also was like feeling like I was super prepared, right? Like I was going to be really awesome because I had a bachelor's degree. I had all this experience working with kids who'd gone through trauma and all this training. And I was like, I'm going to like be awesome. And so I started my program, and as you can imagine, I was really overwhelmed initially. I mean, it was a lot more challenging than I thought. I came from, going to court and getting lots of positive feedback and all this other stuff to a job that was really challenging that I was doing by myself. And even with all of my history, I didn't have a lot of really solid information on child development. So I jumped into the local Care About Childcare classes and just started taking as many classes as I could. And our director at the time, who taught a lot of our classes, was a big fan of Bev Boss. Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing about Bev, and I was like, is she insane? Like, legitimately, like I saw this video of like all these kids like playing in the sand and they're running around in their underwear. And I was like, what in the world? But I was so intrigued by it that I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so, I mean, over the years, I just kept taking trainings. I kept trying to adjust things in my program. I went and saw Lisa several years ago in Southern California. I ended up going out to Bev's school twice for good stuff for kids. And I just sort of like adjusted over the years and really became a convert to play-based childcare. But it took a while. There was a lot of cognitive dissonance for me for a long time.
Well, and I love Bev. I remember Bev saying always at the end of many of her training, start in a corner.
Yeah.
Just start in a corner. Yeah. And don't, try to take on too much at a time, but just start in a corner. I just love that she would give people permission to risk, right? By starting in a corner.
Yeah.
Please, I'm sorry.
So like you weren't necessarily, when I heard the word convert, I'm thinking kind of, oh, wow, she used to do the dittos and the flashcards and then convert it into play. But it almost sounds like early in your career, you kind of saw the light, if I can be so bold, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not hearing that you had to shed a lot of best practice. I'm hearing that maybe you just needed to make room for something that, although was different, it resonated with you, obviously, almost immediately.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, if we're getting to the honest truth of it, I wanted to be that person that was really organized and had a curriculum set out for the year. I just wasn't. So I think also like you talk about resonance, it did, because for me, you know, like I couldn't make that other thing work very well anyway.
Which was a blessing in disguise, maybe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I never was really like into like worksheets or real developmentally inappropriate practice, but I definitely thought that I had to be doing things more organized and more planned out and than I was. So
I think that's really interesting. So I'm curious how you help fellow early childhood professionals sort of see a different path.
Yeah.
When they say to you, oh, I can't do it because of blah, 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 blah. Talk to us about how you convert them.
Well, I think the first thing for me is that, I mean, number one, I tell them my stories, right? Like I tell them about the experience that I had. And this was several years into my program. But I remember one day the kids were throwing blocks or cars or something, you know, that was like dangerous. And instead of just telling them they couldn't throw it, I thought, well, obviously they need to throw. So what can we throw? And we got out the bean bags and we ended up in this huge beanbag war, and there was the hospital and the jail and all the things. And we sat and played together for probably a good solid 30 minutes. And I sat down after that and my brain was just going like this. And I felt so good. And I recognized, like, if I feel like this, and this is such a positive experience for me, what does this do for the kids? And what have I been shutting down? You know, by telling them that, you know, they couldn't play loud inside, or we can't throw things inside. So I tell those sorts of stories, but I also like just encourage people to be curious. Like, instead of getting frustrated, get curious. And like Bev says, start in a corner. Like, where can you start? So I also tell the story of like how I went to Bev's program the first summer, and I fell in love with it. It was beautiful, and the people there, like I fell in love with it. So I came back, and Lisa, I know you warned people not to do this, right? But I started to change
everything.
Yeah.
I started to like try and do things, and they weren't working, right? So I went back the next summer, and I said, Beth, I tried to do this and it didn't work. And she said, well, why were you doing it that way? And I was like, wait, what? You know, like I didn't have enough information. And so I just had to learn to be patient with myself and to be observant and curious first before I started to just try and adjust everything.
I'm wondering if we were at Good Stuff at the same time and didn't even realize it.
We might have been. You know what? I don't think so, because I think I had already been to your program. I was there with Dan though.
Yeah. Rest in peace,
I
Dan.
I know. I miss Dan.
I like that. Observe and be curious first, because then that's going to guide you as to what that next step is. And then that initial change or modification is going to be based on your direct observation of what's needed, as opposed to what we want or think should be what's next. That's a brilliant formula.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just the other thing that I had to like sort of like understand too is I think I had this idea, like when I fell in love with Bev, that I had to be Bev, you know?
I think a lot of people did.
And I had to really like understand, you know, her program was different, right? Like she had a, 2.5, 3-hour program. She had a lot of parent volunteers. I have a full day program with, 2 or 3 teachers all day. It's just a different setup. And so things are going to look differently. And that was okay. Like there was nothing wrong with that. Like, so that's sort of where I had to come from.
And it's almost like you don't have to replicate it, but if you just go with Bev's principles of the child is the curriculum,
Yeah.
right? And that makes you curious about what is it that the children are interested in doing, learning, playing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how can I observe and be a facilitator without interfering, right? So I think sometimes we think we have to jump in, and that shuts the play down. And so I think it's giving people the tools in their toolbox that they can consider, and baby stepping them through it, right? So just be curious. What is it that children are really interested in doing? And, you know, if you follow the child's lead, that when they were throwing blocks, that was the perfect example. Well, what could they throw? Because obviously this is a skill that they're trying to develop. So we need to figure out how they can do that. And instead of being frustrated and shutting it down and saying, we're going to put the blocks in the closet because you're throwing them, right? And so I think it's those nuances and taking some scenario that's happening in the classroom and reframing it into what is it that children are trying to tell me instead of what are children doing, right? So I think it's a beautiful way of looking at it and gives people tools to shift. The path.
Tell me more about the title. Not that I need you to like talk about your title, but talk me through the "well, that's nice" piece. Who's hearing that? Who's saying that?
I hear that from a lot of other providers and in a lot of contexts of family childcare, right? I think it's easy for us to get stuck in victim mode, right? Because this is really challenging. It is really hard. And so, you know, they'll say, well, I can't do that because my home's not a center and I'm not gonna do that. Well, I can't do that because I can't hire people. And they just sort of get stuck on their barriers. And for me, it's been huge to shift my mindset to be like, okay, well, maybe that's not what I'm doing right now, but what can I do? And what can I do right now? And also to recognize that the progress takes time. I'm out on my back porch and I look at my backyard, and when we moved in here 10 years ago, it was nothing. Like it was a slope and there was 2 cedar trees, right? And now there's still so much to do. Like I still have so many projects I want to do, but when I stop and pay attention and really appreciate what we've created, it's such a beautiful play space for kids. And there's so many amazing things that happen out here. And I think that really has started when I was able to see, okay, maybe I can't be Bev right now. And maybe I'm never going to be Bev, but what can I do right now for the kids in my program? And what are my priorities? What do I need to start with first? And go from there.
And instead of the deficit, what I can't do, or I can't do that where I am, it's what's possible, right? What's possible? Where could you start? What corner could you start in if you choose to go down this path? And I think so many times, especially when family childcare providers feel like they're isolated, and they are, right? If they're the only one that is doing this work and they're working 12 hours a day. And I mean, I truly respect every family childcare provider out there because I don't know how they do it. I really don't. I can't imagine that long of a day with young children, right? And then sometimes I think because we feel like we're so isolated, that sometimes we feel like what we have to be more scheduled, right?
Yeah.
We have to have a more rigid routine during the day, which makes our job harder than if we just let children play, right? And we just follow their lead instead of expecting them to follow ours. And I think that's true for classroom teachers with 25 other people in the building as well. I think it's just the profession itself wanting to prove themselves because we feel like we're disrespected. Even, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a college professor of early childhood education, a family childcare provider, or a teacher in a program. You don't feel like people view you as a professional. So I think all of those things sort of come into play. So when they say things, do you hear that a lot, that they feel like they're not respected, that people don't respect the boundaries of their home, that they're not respectful, that there maybe their children are still sleeping at 6 o'clock in the morning when they open the door? And and how does that influence how they view being a little more relaxed during the day and following children sleep? So those are things I'm curious about.
Yeah. Well, I'll start here. I think it's interesting because when I first started doing childcare, I had been a working mom. My oldest was 4. And so I started going to these classes before I even started doing childcare. And I was absolutely appalled by the way that providers were talking about parents. Now that I've been doing it for 14 years, I can understand a lot of their frustrations and I feel a lot of them, right? But I sort of had this feeling like, you don't understand what it's like. You don't know what it's like to have to leave your kids at somebody else's house and to try and balance all this stuff. And like I said, now I know that there's 2 perspectives, but I think that there's just such a lack of understanding on both sides, right? But I also feel like when we are committed to the belief that we are being disrespected and that parents aren't going to treat us correctly, that sort of manifests itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We get what we ask for. We get what we're thinking is going to happen. We just assume. And then that's a problem. And I get it. You know, I was a director for 13 and a half years. And there would be days when I'd go, okay, you know, I need to reflect on what just happened. And I need to figure out a better way, because parents are their child's first and best teacher. And I need to respect parents and their wants and needs. And I have to find a way to balance my own beliefs and practices, especially if I have a diverse population, right? Because the way I was raised is different from the way you were raised or the way someone else was raised. And so sometimes we parent the way we were parented.
No, there's no sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all the time.
Always.
Unless you change your mind. Like
Yeah.
at some point you're like, coulda, shoulda, woulda been different. It's gonna be the same.
And so sometimes it's helpful, I always remember the parent whose toddler bit, well, just bite him back, and I'm like, and in my
But
head,
this
I'm
all
going,
comes back to relationships, right?
Yeah.
The empathy piece, all of that, and establishing and nurturing the relationships with our family, our clients, our families, whatever language we use, just as much as the children who are in our care. And I think for a lot of people in the profession initially, they were given like a golden pass, like as long as you're good with the kids, like the director can be the boss of like navigating the parental extra family stuff. But then I made that switch from center-based care to family childcare. And I learned really quick that was not gonna, do not pass go, do not collect 200. There was nobody to delegate to. I had to like dive into the deep end and figure out, okay, I got to figure out how to be just as good with them as I know I am with their children. And to circle back to Bev, rest in peace. I mean, how many times Bev used to say that once you've established the environment, 99% of your job is parent education, and not with that lens of like, I know more than you and you need to do it like this, but just that we don't know what we don't know. And all of us here, probably most of the people tuning in and watching, we're experts in this field, just like our clients are experts in things that, I don't barge into their office and tell them how to do it. I might share concerns, I might give some input, but at the end of the day, I trust that they're the ones that have a handle on how this is being done. But we still know that it's going to be easier to broach those conversations and have those conversations if at the end of the day, we're working on establishing some kind of a relationship, that goes beyond just a transaction.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's really hard for family childcare providers as well, because, I hated as a director being the one that had to collect the money and build the relationship, right? Because there's a conflict there, but that's what family childcare providers live. every day, right? So I do think that it is understanding how to build that relationship with everyone who's involved. That's the most important thing. So how have you helped them move to, like, sort of taking a detour on a path, not seeing parents as I don't want to say enemies, but sometimes I say to even
Others.
center-based folks, I feel like you're in an adverse relationship versus a positive relationship with the families that you serve. And how much does that influence, especially if the children see your attitude to their parents that may not be positive, and then the children are conflicted. Why I love Miss Kristy and I love my mom, and whose side am I going to be on? OMG, that whole dynamic can shift and children feel anxious.
Well, and that's, I think my social work background is helpful there, right? Because we learned about that early on, that when children's parents fight against each other, they have this conflict that they don't know how to resolve either. So I share that with people. And I think part of that problem is a lot of the times those family or those providers that are struggling with that have not been able to come to terms with their own boundaries, right? Like they're trying to be everything to everyone, right? Like maybe they know what's best for kids and they want to do more play-based things, but they feel like they have to do it because this is what their parents expect, and they're getting all these demands and they're trying to meet everybody's demands. And it's too hard. It's too hard. But instead of stepping into, okay, here's what I can do, here's where I'm at, they sort of like throw it off. Well, I can't, like, that's nice that you can do that, but I could never do that. Right.
Do you call them on it? Like, are you coaching people? Do you call them out on it? Like, okay, fine. I hear that. What can you do?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm able to do that in a few of the roles that I do. I just got done teaching a class for Care About Childcare on family childcare environments. And the second one I think was on outdoor environments. And one of the gals was just like, this looks awesome, but I don't even know where to start. I said, just again, get curious, look at your stuff. Don't jump in and change anything. Just look and see, what can I do? Where can I make one small adjustment and try it out and go from there? So we do that in the classes that I teach, but also, in the support groups that I'm a part of, and different projects that I'm a part of. I just try to share my perspective, because I think that is the most powerful thing for me, is that I know that I have that perspective as a working mom, and I know that I now have that perspective and understanding as a provider. And so whatever I can share with people, that's what I try to do.
Yes. It's really interesting, the whole parent dynamic with their children. And so one of the activities I do with my infant and toddler class is I have stuffed animals and baby dolls in the classroom. And the first day they walk in the door, they have to go choose one. And they have to, every day when they come into class, they have to get their stuffed animal or their baby doll. And we talk about, how parents feel when they drop off their baby. And then I make them, after they've had their baby for 2 or 3 weeks, I make them get up and have to give it to someone they don't know across the room. And it is amazing how they have bonded with whatever this baby or stuffed animal is. They've named it. They tell me how old it is. They tell me its temperament. They tell me all these wonderful things about this stuffed animal or baby. And then they have to give it to a stranger. And they go, okay, I get it now. That was hard. And I said, so just imagine, this is the most precious. They don't know you from Adam. They don't know who you are, what you do, what education you have. So,
and oftentimes, honestly, they don't care. They just want to know that their baby is going to be loved on, right?
And
or
safe. Yeah.
Taken care of. And some of the extra stuff is peripheral at that juncture.
Yeah. But the trust that they have to give you is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but especially right now where, you know, the whole childcare
COVID.
industry, I don't know what it's like where you guys are at, but where we're at, there is not enough childcare.
Right.
It's
And-
nowhere.
Right.
And everybody's desperate, and they just, you know, like, and I get it. Like I sometimes get frustrated with parents, but I understand they don't have any other options, right? Like, so when they call and they're like, how much do you charge and can I start tomorrow? You know, like, I mean, that's not where I want to come from, but I understand, like, they're
That's their
desperate. Like, they can't
reality.
feed their kids. If they can't
Yeah.
go to work and feed their kids, then, you know, what
Well,
are they going to do?
Yes, and that's their reality, right? So sometimes we have to get away from what would be perfect, and we have to really think about what's their reality.
Well, it's like what we know about kids. We're going to meet them where they are. We're going to
Mhm.
start. That's where we're going to start. And then we're going to constantly be adding and growing at that point. But right now, if that's where you are, I mean, I agree with you, Chris. Anytime back in the day, man, people call, if their first question was, how much do you charge? I'm like, you need to come in because we talk about that during the tour, and they'll be like, click, click,
Mhm.
you know, and you know, we were able to be a little bit more, I don't want to say picky and choosy. That's not the word, but like right now, I mean, for those of you viewing, and who knows when right now we're in a pandemic. We are recording this right now in the middle of a pandemic. And the reality is that people need childcare yesterday. People need providers yesterday, meaning in a childcare center. You know, we need people who are willing to show up and mind other people's children. And, you know, we're not necessarily at that place of having the luxury, unfortunately. I mean, I'll go on record, you know, you want to make sure that there's an awesome goodness of fit with all parties involved. And right now people are like, you know what, I got somebody here who's willing to show up.
But
And,
even that question though, of how much do you charge? I will admit, that was one of the first questions I asked as a parent, right? And I was a conscientious parent. I mean, I was real sort of like nervous about my kids. I worked for Child and Family Services. I'd seen a lot of stuff. But the truth was, my husband was in school. We were putting our childcare on student loans.
Mhm.
And that was an important part of the equation. If I couldn't afford it, I couldn't afford it.
Right.
So
Right.
true. But I also would get you in the door, because then I could read you,
Yeah.
I could have that conversation. And if my fee was more, then, and I got the vibe like that this was going to be a fit, then I'm going to make something happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're just looking to save $10 and you're not necessarily going to be somebody buying into the program, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to compromise the program, but I'm willing
well,
to
and I did tour, and this is what I learned as a parent, right? Like, I would tour cheaper programs, and I remember walking into one and thinking, I am not even comfortable here. Like, there is no way I'm leaving my kids here.
Mhm.
So, but again, I feel like I was sort of like a super conscientious parent. I was pretty informed, and I think some parents just aren't informed. They just don't know what to look for.
Well, and I think part of that comes back to whatever the state licensing is, the licensing equals quality, which we know is not the case, right? And so I think that that's a something that parents go, well, they're licensed, so they have to be good, versus and that's on us, that we need to educate parents about the difference. Kristy, this has been amazing. So I want you to think about what your next topic will be, because this has been really helpful. And I think for the audience, we covered a lot of different pieces that are important, that contribute to what we hope people will consider as what's possible in their classroom or in their family childcare home, versus I can't do that, or that's not possible, right? So I think that's the attitude. Start in a corner, as Bev would tell us. Be curious about what it is children are interested in. Remember that children are the curriculum, not what comes in the mail or in a box. And that's if you start there, there's nowhere to go, but you know, you're just going to keep going. It's going to be wonderful. So don't leave us. You have one more closing comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, sort of in that mindset thing, I think that we just have to remember to be patient with ourselves, right? Be curious, make small changes, but know that over time, it's going to make a huge difference. Like, I sometimes feel like I am not making any of the progress that I want to make. And then I look back to where I was 5 or 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so I think that's the be curious, and be patient.
And celebrate your
celebrate, yeah.
successes, right? Absolutely. All right, hang tight while I close this out. So to learn more about Porch Play Chats, go to IPA-USA.org, friend us on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And until next time, keep on playing.
Bye-bye.